Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Zodiark, Umbral God. It is a 5 mana 5/5 with Indestructible, and when it enters, each player sacrifices half the non-god creatures they control of their choice, rounded down. And whenever a player sacrifices another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Zodiark. This mono-black commander focuses on making our opponents sacrifice their creatures to grow even bigger, but what I found really interesting is that it has 5 black pips in its mana costs, which means that it comes with a very high devotion. This is a mono-black deck that focuses around a lot of edict effects, simply to grow Zodiark really big, probably take an opponent out with commander damage, but then also win with a Gary Saw in half combo due to our high devotion to black. Let's quickly talk about our ramp package. We play Dark Ritual, a 1 mana instant to add 3 black mana, which can lead to very explosive turns. We play Mindstone, a 2 mana artifact which we can tap for colorless, and for 1 mana tapping it and sacrificing it, we can draw a card. New staples that came with the Final Fantasy sets are the crystals. The Darkness Crystal, for example, a 4 mana legendary artifact, and black spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Furthermore, if a non-token creature an opponent control would die, exile it instead and you gain 2 life. This is already a really powerful replacement effect to shut down all of our opponent's graveyard synergies with their creatures. And even though we discount our black spells, which won't discount Zodiark due to having black pips in its mana costs, we can still reduce incoming commander taxes. It also has an activated ability for 6 mana, and tapping it, put target creature card exiled with the Darkness Crystal onto the battlefield tapped under your control with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. We also accelerate all of our other cards with Jet Medallion, a 2 mana artifact, and black spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. To get even more mana out of our swamps, we play Cryptghast, a 4 mana 2/2 with Extort, and whenever you tap a swamp for mana, add an additional black mana. We play Throne of Eldraine, a 5 mana legendary artifact, and as it enters the battlefield, choose a color, which will be black, and we can tap it to add 4 mana of the chosen color, spend this mana only to cast mono-colored spells of that color. We can also pay 3 mana and tap it to draw 2 cards, but we can only spend mana of the chosen color to activate this ability. Once we have ramped and brought Zodiark onto the battlefield, we want to play even more edict creatures, like Flashback Marauder, a 3 mana 3/1, and when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. We play Demon's Disciple, 3 mana 3/1, and when it enters, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Merciless Executioner, a 3 mana 3/1, and when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. I do really like Abyssal Gatekeeper, a 2 mana 1/1, and when it dies, each player sacrifices a creature. You are also affected by Zodiark's ETB trigger, which means that if you sacrifice the Gatekeeper into his ability, you will trigger it and your opponents are then forced to sacrifice another creature. We play Accursed Marauder, a 2 mana 2/1, and when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. As you know from all of my other deck tech videos, I play a bunch of instant speed edict effects, but a card that I definitely want to mention more is Maya in Misery, especially in mono black decks. Simply because it is a 2 mana sorcery and each opponent sacrifices a creature or enchantment, which is a very powerful and helpful card in mono black decks, simply because it is very hard for mono black decks to handle enchantments. More edict effects that I want to mention come from the cards Momentum Breaker, a 2 mana enchantment with Start Your Engines, and when this enchantment enters, each opponent sacrifices a creature or vehicle of their choice. Each opponent who can't discards a card. For 2 mana and sacrificing Momentum Breaker, you gain life equal to your speed. Another great card is Tithing Blade, a 2 mana artifact, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. We can also craft this card with a creature card in our graveyard and spending 5 mana to get Consuming Sepulture, an artifact that at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. The reason why I want to especially highlight these cards is simply because they stay on the battlefield and increase your devotion count. And now let's talk about synergistic creatures in this deck. For example, Ghoulcaller Gisa, a 5 mana 3/4, and for 1 black mana, tapping her and sacrificing another creature, we create X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. Zodiark will grow so big that at some point people will start throwing throwing removal at him, and even though we play a little bit of protection, we might come to the point where we have to sacrifice him into Giza, simply to draw even more value from our opponent's throwing removal at him. We play Sheoldred Whispering One, a 7 mana 6/6 with Swamp Walk, and at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. This repeatable reanimation and force to sacrifice trigger will definitely accelerate our game plan and grow Zodiark by a huge amount. For even more devotion to black, we play Phyrexian Obliterator, a 4 mana 5/5 with Trample, and whenever a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. It is a great blocker, a strong beater, and in addition to that it increases our devotion count. A great synergistic card with Sheoldred, for example, is Morbid Opportunist, a 3 mana 1/3, and whenever one or more other creatures die, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. To repeatedly reanimate our Edict creatures, we play Drana, the Last Bloodsheath, a 5 mana 4/4 with Flying, and whenever she attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card in your graveyard. You return that card to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, and the creature is a vampire in addition to its other types. Last but not least, I need to mention Grey Merchant of Asphodel, aka Gary, a 5 mana 2/4, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Preferably, we want to target it with Saw in Half, a 3 mana instant, destroy target creature. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their base power is half that creature's power and their base toughness is half that creature's toughness, round up each time. You want to win more? You get it. We play Erebros, Bleak-Hearted, a 4 mana 5/6 with Indestructible, and as long as your devotion to black is less than 5, Erebos isn't a creature. Furthermore, whenever another creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life, and if you do, draw a card. And for 2 mana, we can sacrifice another creature, so target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. This card is in our win more section because it is a god creature, so it isn't affected by Zodiark's ETB trigger, and it also provides a lot of card advantage because we are also forced to sacrifice with Zodiark's ETB trigger and due to all of our Edict creatures. We continue with Erebros, God of the Dead, a 4 mana 5/7 with Indestructible, and as long as your devotion to black is less than 5, Erebos isn't a creature. It says that your opponents can't gain life, and for 2 mana and paying 2 life you draw a card. Again, the same reason, because it is a god creature, it simply becomes a very powerful creature that you will have on the board and that will stick around. Last but not least, we play Sanguimancy, a 5 mana sorcery, and you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is your devotion to black. This card can draw you a bunch of cards in this deck, and as you have seen from the RAM section, we also discount our spells with Jet Medallion or also with the Darkness Crystal, which means that it can lead to a 3 mana sorcery draw like 8 cards. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would feature in Zodiark, Umbral God. Let me know which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next. Make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.